fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. I'm overwhelmed by this one fact about Lincoln. Not only could Lincoln have been a great president during wartime, he could have been a great president during peacetime, but he also could be in the present era right now, and he could be an effective person in business, as a CEO in business. What might we learn from Lincoln? And I'm sure we have many of these techniques I'm going to go over in a moment. But we might like to enhance some of these techniques that we already have. We hear about how Lincoln used them in our business lives. Now, how did Lincoln become such a leader? That's the first question we might ask. Number one, he gained the respect of his peers wherever he went. For instance, when his grocery store went into bankruptcy, Lincoln could have declared personal bankruptcy. But he gained the name Honest Abe because he paid off the debt, and it took years for him to pay off that debt. So he gained respect. That's one way he became a leader. Another way he gained leadership abilities was by his interest, and this is shown in his letters many, many times. He had an interest in the human nature, studying human nature and understanding it. He used this throughout his life and while he was president. We can do the same. We can do more of the same, perhaps. How did he manifest this great leadership ability that he developed? I have 4 areas of his leadership that I'd like to discuss tonight. Number 1, Lincoln gathered information constantly his entire life. Number 2, Lincoln had a personal approach to his colleagues and his subordinates. Number 3, Lincoln was persistent all through his life. Number 4, Lincoln was consistent, particularly while he was president. So in number 1, Lincoln was constantly gathering information. He would ask questions rather than make a statement. In fact, we have the memories of the great controversy over resupplying Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. Lincoln delayed the decision on this until Congress was out of session. But also, Lincoln wanted to gather information. So he sent his close friend, who he had great trust in, Stephen A. Hurlnut, to Charleston. This was before the war was declared. And Hurlnut gathered information and came back. You've got to resupply. It's going to be a crisis. You've got to let the crisis happen. Lincoln took that advice. He gathered information. And he would gather information by talking to his equals, those he felt were his equals in government, because he didn't feel that he was higher than his cabinet, even though some of his cabinets wanted to replace him as president for the second term. And he had this personal approach all his life. He may have been an introvert, but he had a personal approach. He would encourage his subordinates. He would talk to them. He would tell them funny stories. All his funny stories didn't go beyond the point of being raillery. Lincoln tended to be kind. Lincoln tended to be kind, and his stories were kind, even though they showed an understanding of human nature. As with a tugboat letting off steam, as the governor did in his presence, letting off steam. Thirdly, Lincoln was so persistent all his life. And as president, he suffered many setbacks, many setbacks. His son Willie died while he was in office. Mrs. Lincoln suffered great depression, severe depression. And the battles, none of the battles seemed to go well for the Union generals during the early years of the war. But still Lincoln prevailed and was persistent. Persistent in his policies once he was convinced they were correct. He was consistent. He was consistent in keeping to his policies. Once he decided on his policies, he stayed with them, unless it could be proven they were false. He wasn't consistent in staying with his generals because some of his generals disappointed him. But he was consistent on one area, which I would like to mention particularly. Lincoln believed that rancor and vindictiveness had no place in a leader. Because, you can understand the reason very easily, these are distractions. And he didn't want to have any part of any distractions at this time. One story I think will illustrate these facets of Lincoln's leadership. As I said, some of the members of the cabinet wished to replace Lincoln in his second term of office. They were the Republican nomination of Lincoln seeking re-election. And in the pivotal year of 1864, in the spring, a delegation came from the Congress, Republicans, and they said, Lincoln, your policies are not working, you should not seek re-election, we'll find another candidate. So, on number one, Lincoln had gained their respect for the 4 years that he was in office. Number two, he understood the psychology of what was happening. He understood there was dissension in his own cabinet. So the very next day, he gathered information. This is the second number one. And he found out that his Secretary of Treasury, Salmon P. Chase, had put the idea to the congressman, Lincoln must go. So what did Lincoln do? He had a personal coach. And we might use this in our business lives. He called together a meeting that very evening. He also invited those congressmen over, combined the two groups. And he said, members of the cabinet, I'd like you to discuss my policies and tell me how you think I should do, what I should do, whether I should seek re-election. So we all run the cabinet. Came time for Chase to give his opinion. And grudgingly, he had to say, well, I support the president. I think he's doing a good job. I don't know of anybody who wants him not to run for re-election. And so the members of Congress are saying, what's it with this Chase? He's not a sincere individual, is he? And they can defuse the situation without being vindictive to Chase or to show rancor, anger. And he secured his place for the re-nomination which he won. Memorable are those two items of Lincoln's leadership. He disallowed rancor and vindictiveness in his own leadership, and he had this overwhelming interest in human nature. I think everyone here uses those terms and those systems in their own business lives. Madam Toastmaster, I'm going to get it right.